Hi everyone, John here from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And today I want to answer a couple of your questions about home inspections. So the first question that we have today is, how long should a home inspection take? How long is the duration of a home inspection? And obviously it varies on the size of the home. So a 5,000 square foot house would take a heck of a lot longer than say a 2,000, square foot house to inspect. But the average home, say 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths with a basement and a garage, maybe a deck or some other structure outside, should take about 3 hours. And that's obviously plus or minus, but generally about 3 hours. I mean, we have to do the outside, which is time consuming to look at all of the components to the exterior of a home, including the outside grading, the roof, the chimney, the siding, the windows, the gutters, the sidewalks, the deck. That takes about an hour, maybe 45 minutes to an hour just to do the outside. Then we move into the garage, usually, if there is a garage, and then we go down into the basement. Now, the basement inspection, that's really the crux of the home inspection. Obviously, we'll look at everything top to bottom, but the basement probably takes the longest to inspect out of any area of the home, because that's where all the equipment is. That's usually where the boiler is, the furnace is, the water heater is, the electrical service panel. All of these things are located in the basement. And in the basement, we're looking for structural defects, water penetration, problems with plumbing and electrical, and a host of, there's probably 1,000 things, that we're looking for in the basement of a home. So that takes also a very long time to inspect. So you figure about, maybe an hour to inspect the basement of the home, answer any of the client's questions and things like that. Then the balance of the home, the kitchen, the living room, dining room, bedrooms, those rooms, they're generally a lot smoother than, say, the basement or the exterior. So you're able to do those a little bit more quickly, obviously depending on the client. And then you get to the attic, and the attic is the next area of sort of major concern. And sometimes attics are difficult to get into. Sometimes they're difficult to traverse. So an attic takes some time too. So to answer that question, and I can only speak for myself, and I've seen other home inspectors, perform home inspections in about 2 hours or less, in fact. And I just don't think that's enough time. I don't rush. I never wanted to rush, and I still don't. And I can only speak for myself, but I do one home inspection a day, so I don't have to rush to the next job. I'm not always trying to look at the clock. I'm trying not to beat the clock, because I'm there for that particular client, making sure that they're comfortable in what we're finding and explaining everything that I possibly can to them and answering, their questions and concerns. So I think that's very important, not to rush a home inspection, because clients paying you, you want to do a good job. Your reputation's on the line, obviously. And the more thorough, the better job, the more communicative you can be, obviously the client is going to be all the more happier. So that's really the rough answer, and that would obviously vary with a lot of different variables. So between that 3 and 4 hour mark would probably be a comfortable time frame to perform a home inspection on an average house. And if you're talking about a much larger home, say 4,000, 5,000 square feet, you're probably in the in the 4 hour to 5 hour, 5.5 hour range, in that area too, because there's just, more house to inspect. So I hope that helps. And so hire a home inspector who's going to take their time and do the job correctly and not rush. The next question we get is, when should I expect the home inspection report? And good home inspectors are going to get that report to you quickly. Why? Why do you need it quickly? Because everything you do in real estate has a time constraint, right? There's an inspection contingency period. And that inspection contingency period generally in New Jersey is 10 days or 14 days unless you negotiate other time frames and have your agent and attorney negotiate other time frames to make it longer or shorter, whatever. I don't recommend shorter for sure. I recommend longer if possible. So the longer you have to get the home inspection report back and to get your findings back to the seller is obviously important because it gives you more time to do that due diligence. But anyway, that's a different question. To get the home inspection report quickly, this way you can act on that report quickly. So rather than waiting 3 days and losing, say, 2 or 3 days waiting for that report, you really want to have that report done the next day. So I highly recommend that home inspectors deliver that report the following day. This way their clients can start working on any of the issues. And if that home inspector and that client needs to do additional due diligence, say they find, a foundation wall issue or a major, concern with something, and they need to have another professional inspector come out, such as an architect or a professional engineer, that just gives you more time to line that up and to get that going. So the more time you have, the better off you're going to be. With one caveat, home inspectors that deliver the report the same day generally are just using a checkbox type of report, and it's not tailored to the home that you're buying. They're just clicking off boxes basically in their software. I don't think that's the best way to go because there's no way that an on-site report is going to be as detailed as a home inspection report that's done where a home inspector is taking their time working through the afternoon and into the evening, creating the report for you. So if I were you, I would try to stay away from that on-site report generation. There's no way that report is going to equal the report that a home inspector creates, say overnight, that's going to be 80, 90, sometimes 100 pages, long. And that on-site report is just not going to be, that detailed. It's just, how can it be, right? Also, you should try to look for a home inspector that does a summary. Now, there's a lot of talk out there in my home inspection community as home inspectors, whether to put a summary or not put a summary. That summary may put us home inspectors in a bad position. I don't really think that's the case. I never had a problem in 20 plus years providing a summary for a person and that coming back at me, because most people understand that the summary is exactly that. It's a summary, and it's the highlights. It's the bigger issues that we find in the home. And I think it's important for a home inspector to sort of cull out the biggest issues in a house and put that separate so the client can understand what they are on paper, rather than having everything, the same importance, right? So, having a door latch loose is way different, than having mold in your basement, right? So mold in the basement, would be an example of something that would be on the summary page because it's a bigger item. It's a highlighted item. And I think having a summary helps the home inspection client understand that, hey, these are the biggest things. But you know what? You're still responsible to read the entire report because something on, at the end of the report that is not on the summary still may be very important to you, the client. So it's up to you really and your attorney to digest everything and to come up with a list of important issues that you may want remediation for, or you may want credits back for. But having a summary helps you do that. And I'm for a summary. I've never had an issue with it, and I think it's very helpful. So you may want to ask the question to home inspectors who you're interviewing, hey, do you perform a thorough report, and do you provide a summary of the highlighted issues that we find during the home inspection? So ask the question when you're on the phone with a prospective home inspector. So what are the most important areas of home to get inspected, right? So I get this question, and for me, the basement is number one. Clearly, that's where the majority of the issues are going to be, or the biggest, problems potentially in a house. So basement number one. Number two would be the exterior. And this is surprising because you wouldn't think the exterior, we would find a lot of problems on the exterior of a house. But generally, the exterior portion of my report is as long as, say, the basement of the report. So I find a lot of problems on the exterior of houses, and that is truly an important aspect of the home because a lot of the exterior inspection has to do with water control. And water control is vitally important, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the basement inspection because we want to make sure that we're controlling our water on the outside of the house so we don't have a water problem, obviously, on the inside of the house. So basement, number one. Number two, the exterior of the house. And number three, the attic space. And the attic space is super important because it's what's over the house, right? The roof is there. Structurally, it's important. We want to make sure that it's dry, that there's no mold, that there's no water infiltration, that it's properly vented, and it's properly insulated. There's a lot of things, to look for in an attic. So those are the three things I think are the most important aspects of a home inspection and where the major issues are found. Number one, the basement. Number two, the exterior. And number three, the attic. I thought it might be fun to answer some of your questions today and keep the questions coming because I'm going to do a little bit of a series on the biggest questions in home inspection. And I'm going to keep, doing that. So today I think we answered like three of the questions. So there's a lot more, and we'll be doing a lot more question answering. Hopefully you find it helpful. I enjoy it, so hopefully you're getting some benefit out of it. I also have some defects coming up that I found recently in doing an older home here, pretty close to where I live. And you should just look for some of these things in older homes, that you're thinking about purchasing. Some of it will also apply to, older homes that you live in or houses that you're thinking about buying. But I think it's helpful just, for you guys to understand what we look at, what our job is as home inspectors, and to actually see some of the things in real life, in video and pictures of some of the things that, we do find in homes. And maybe you'll find that helpful when you're, looking for a house in this crazy real estate market. So, hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And here are some of those defects. Termites are funny things because you can have a piece of wood like this and it looks perfectly fine. And then you take your screwdriver and then that happens. So this looks completely normal, fine, everything's looking good. But if you don't probe that wood like that, you're never going to find this termite damage. So we do have termite, obviously, damage to this windowsill here. So the home is going to have to be treated for termites. But just because wood looks pristine, painted, really nice, and looks good, doesn't mean that there's not a problem lurking under it. I'm just starting the exterior inspection of this house. And of course, one of the things we always look for is the grading around the outside of the home. And when you pull up to a house and you see this channeling occurring here, so this channeling is caused by gutters that are not working properly because the water is just overflowing the gutter and it's ending up so close to the exterior foundation walls. And this is something we want to correct. Gutters are crucially important for directing water away from the exterior walls of the home. Any water that were to lay around the outside of the house seeps down, and it makes the home vulnerable to water infiltration and seepage problems. So look for this kind of thing around your own home or homes you're thinking about buying. If you see this channeling going on here, and to give you an example here on the outside of this house, that means we have water overflowing our gutters, and that's no good. We need to clean the gutters and make sure they're pitched correctly. Flat roof system here, and this is a rubberized membrane roof right here. But we shouldn't see this. We shouldn't see these bubbles here in this roof membrane. This tells me that we're likely getting water under this material, and that's what's probably causing this issue here. So this rubberized roof should be laying flat against the roof surface so the water can flow away down here into the gutter. But here with this big ridge, we're going to have water retention right here, and that's not good. We don't want to have water laying ever for a long period of time on a low slope roof like this. So
If you're looking at a house and you see this bubbling of this rubberized roofing material like this, there's a problem. And this is likely to need replacement. We're going to recommend replacement, especially when we look at the corners here where water can come in, enter all these gaps, get underneath the roofing material here. All these gaps are no good. We don't want to see any of these gaps around the edge flashing here. This is very poor, you know, nothing really good going on here. So look for this type of thing when you have a house of your own or you're thinking about buying a house with a low slope roof. Older sump pump, basement drain system here, here, and here. But look at how obstructed that termination is to that portion of the basement dewatering system right there. It's all clogged up with mud and debris. So that's not going to work. So we always look at these pipes, make sure they're not obstructed and can actually do their job. But that's not going to work. And that's how we get water in the basement. I'm looking at this old garage, and one thing we want to do in an old garage like this is to probe for termites. So you can actually sound the wood. You can hear that that sounds hollow like that. So if I put my screwdriver right here, right, we have termite damage for sure. Right here, I'm going right through that sill plate. So one thing you can even do is to sound that wood. And if it sounds hollow, it's likely to be termite damaged. So we always want to make sure that we check for the sill plate termite damage in old garages. We want to probe the wood properly. We want to sound the wood just to make sure that we don't have any termite damage. So any areas of compromised wood like this and this sill plate are going to have to be replaced because that's a structural component. Our studs end up being supported by the sill plate. The sill plate's on the foundation wall, and this is a structural component that has to be replaced. I'm looking at an underside of a garage roof structure, and we see that the asphalt shingle roof is installed on these Cedar Shakes right here. You can see the Cedar Shakes. Now this is done a lot in older homes, but this cedar is very soft wood. It doesn't make for an adequate roof deck, although we see this all the time. So this counts as 2 layers of roofing. So when it is time for a roof on the structure of this garage, the Cedar Shakes, the asphalt roof covering is going to have to be removed, and then a new roof deck, plywood installed instead of this cedar right here. But you can look for this in old attics, old garages, look for this, Cedar Shakes right here, and then you can know that you're going to need to replace all of this when you do your roof. Main sewer line access plug right here, right? So if you're looking at this plug and you see something funky like this, right? So here we have a Fernco, and here we have basically a sewer cap pushed into the Fernco backwards. So when you see this type of thing right here in a home that you're buying, we've had sewer work done, right? So this cap has been removed, obviously. And these old caps are actually quite difficult to remove. So we know that we've had sewer work done. So we always recommend when we see this type of thing to have a sewer line inspection done of the main sewer line. That's really important because as a home inspector, I can't see what's going on below ground, right? The only way to know is to put a camera down this sewer line and to trace that sewer line, video that line all the way out to the street connection and determine if there's any problems. And there's likely going to be something going on in this old sewer line because the caps are no bueno. When you're looking at a basement walkout door, you don't really want to see a lot of areas of daylight like this, especially back here we have a big opening, and over here we have a big opening. This is how mice get into your house. So mice can enter the home. Just take a look at your pinky. That's how big a space a mouse can enter. Mice enter. Anyway, you want to make sure that there's no areas of daylight, that we don't have a lot of openings like this. These should properly be sealed because you're going to have a mice problem in your house that you either own or you're thinking about buying. So we shouldn't see any gaps like this. Seal them up. If you're buying a house, especially an older home, and you're in the basement and you see this, all this black on these interior walls like this, this is a sign of water seepage coming through. Our walls are going to be clammy. They're going to be a little bit wet during heavy rain. This is most likely a mold growth right here. And this you do not want in your house for sure, right? So some of this black mold is highly toxic. You don't want to be breathing this long term, especially if you have anybody immunocompromised or young children in the family. So always look for this. And if you see this on your basement foundation walls in your house or a house that you're buying, this is a problem for sure. Here we have a step crack off of this brick veneer right here. So the step crack is pointing this way, and this right here is the left rear portion of the home. So the location of this step right here, the point of this crack, tells me that we have foundation settlement in this corner. And the likely cause of this problem is this sump pump discharge line and this downspout discharge line here. Something's probably not working correctly, and we probably have some water collecting over the years right here along this foundation wall. So this is something that you guys can look for as well. Now, I don't think this is a super major crack, and I'm not going to call for an engineer. Obviously, that crack should be sealed. But to avoid further issues, we want to make sure that this area of discharge from the sump pump and from this downspout right here are properly functional. So we're going to tell our client about that, and it's actually a good idea to visit a home during heavy rains so you can actually make sure that all your water controls are working properly. When you look at an old windowsill like this, a lot of times this paint in here is going to be a lead-based paint, which is obviously a child safety hazard. But you can tell that this is lead paint because of how the paint chips. You can see this is called alligatoring of the paint chips right here. And that tells me this is probably a lead-based paint. And if we go over here to this other window, you can see that this paint is in worse condition. But usually when it's chipping like this is a lead paint. And obviously you don't want to have a child ingest any of the lead dust from these old windows, and also obviously any of the paint chips here. So to let my client know, they should get a lead paint safe contractor in to clean this up, to repaint these windows. So a lot of times it'll not even be the paint chips, but it'll actually be the lead dust. So you want to look for these friction points in these old windows. As you open and close this window up and down, there's going to be friction here in these window rails, and that's going to create lead dust in the home. So watch this, especially if you have young children and you're buying an older home. Look for this lead paint. Here we have this very large tree growing probably within 10 feet of the foundation, and we see these large roots over here. Tree roots can actually damage a foundation. That's rare, and I don't see that a lot, but we do want to call out trees that are this close to the home. And if you notice, this tree has a lean to it to the neighboring property. So that's something that we also want to tell our client about, obviously, because if the tree goes down, it's going to cause damage to the neighboring home. Always look for trees growing really close to homes that you own or homes that you're thinking about buying. We don't really want large trees like this. Even if they're small trees, you want to remove them before they get big like this. In a driveway like this, we see that we have water collection or evidence of water at this right rear corner of the driveway, very close to the garage foundation here. We don't really want any water collecting close to any kind of structure. So this is something we're actually going to call out. It creates a problem with this garage foundation, possibly, and also creates an icing condition. So most likely what's going on is the water's coming off this slope right here, and it's collecting down. Also, we have a little bit of a slope of the driveway, so all our water is converging at this right rear corner. So we're going to recommend correction in some way, either regrading that driveway so we don't get structural damage here, or the installation of maybe a drain right there to pipe that water from this area at the right rear corner of the driveway.